Hey, Matthew.
Hey, bro, how you doing, mate?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Can't complain, considering
Hey, you look good.
it's all the makeup that I've put on before this interview.
So you went for the makeup. Wow, nice deco at the back.
Thank you. It's my little man cave that Sonia has allowed me to build at home. It's
Ah,
my little space when I get away and when I have these interviews, which I've really enjoyed having. Speaking to not only the media but also just football fans. It's been great.
I won't forgive myself if I don't do this. Good.
I,
Yo,
I, I thought as much.
how is Mama Sonia and the boys?
Yeah, no, thank you. She's behaving herself. The boys are growing. I don't know what they're eating. They're eating us out of the house. I can't keep up. My 15-year-old is almost as tall as I am. So, yeah, unbelievable. I think he should take up basketball instead of football.
But I mean, he'll be following your footsteps. You started playing rugby before you turned pro.
Yeah. So, I mean, at my school in Fishhook, when I was at school, they didn't offer football. So I enjoyed all ball sports. I played rugby. I played a little bit of first team rugby, first team cricket. I really enjoyed my cricket. I
Mm,
still miss it actually. I played tennis, table tennis, everything. And then I got my football fix at the local football club.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I enjoyed it, and I think South Africa is very blessed to have the opportunity to play so many sports.
mm.
Because of the good weather, and most schools do offer a good amount of sports. So we tend to generate good all round athletes. I think.
Mm. I'm told that your dad was very much involved in football.
Yeah, very, I'm surprised that my mother and father are still together because my mum had to put up with a lot of time of with him being away at the
Mm,
football club. He joined Bishop Football Club, unlike myself, when he was very young.
mm,
And I think for about 30 or 40 years, he was chairman on and off for the longest time. And he got a kick out of watching young players develop into good adults. Not only good adults, but good footballers who enjoyed the game and stayed out of trouble for at least 3 or 4 days in the week.
mm, mm. You have a very interesting story, Matthew. Um, you fell in love with the Soweto girl, and you built such a very strong, beautiful family together. How are the boys coping with having a father famous like you? Because I mean, I'm sure being famous sometimes it affects you when you go to the mall or you go to the park with the boys.
Yeah, when they were younger, especially 2009, 2010, it was quite difficult.
Mm,
But I think they were still quite young to fully understand what was going on. And now that they've grown a bit older, I think obviously I've retired and I don't get as much attention, obviously, as what I did back then.
mm,
Um, and I think I get recognized when I do go out by the sort of older, middle-aged generation who does remember 2010 and
mm,
my contribution. But they, especially my youngest, I think he's absolutely fascinated with football. He's besotted with the game. They
mm,
both play the game. And they've handled it very well. I don't think I've never put pressure on them to follow in my footsteps.
mm,
My eldest one is a very good 400-meter athlete. He plays football in the GDL, which is the Gauteng Development League. Actually, he plays every weekend against Sundowns and Chiefs and Pirates. So I encourage them to try as many different sports as possible, and there's no pressure from me whatsoever.
mm. Obviously, there are very few football fans today who remember you at Cape Town Spurs. Jersey number 18, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, how old are you? You're giving your age away.
I followed your career, Matthew, from the first time I saw you on TV until your last game at Vet. So you can quite see that you have a fan in me.
No, that's great. Yeah. So I played for Fish Hoek AFC from I started when I was 5 years old playing for the under eights, and I left Fish Hoek when I was 17 when I got spotted by Cape Town Spurs, Mich de Avray, at the very famous and prestigious Bay Hill tournament, where a lot of the good Cape Town youngsters got spotted, and I happened to be one of them. And in my last year of school, I signed a semi-professional contract with Cape Town Spurs. I think it was for 250 rand. Just for transport money, so that I could pay for my train fare from Fish Hoek to Cape Town, and then from Cape Town to Parow. I remember sitting with my homework books and getting through my last year of school while playing for the Colts, and on the odd occasion training with the senior team, which included the likes of David Modise, Ronnie Zondi, Sean Bartlett. You know, it was a fantastic squad, and I was very fortunate to end up with them.
And then the biggest transfer of your career at the time, you obviously first it was a major, the Ajax Amsterdam forming Ajax Cape Town. You were chopped. You didn't form part of Ajax, but later on you moved to Sundowns. But before we talk about Sundowns, I want you to relive this memory with me, the 2000 Olympics. Because I still remember all the games, and I still remember how excited we were watching you partnering Aaron Mokoena at centre back. You had David Kumi on the left. You had Nkipiteni Matombo at right back. You have Abraham Teo, Ace Mboto in front of you. There was Benny McCarthy up front. There was Quinton Fortune. There was Darren Barkley. That was the greatest South African squad I've ever seen. How was it like for you to be part of that team?
Yeah, so I've always said that I wish that SAFA can sign off on another journey, on another vision, 2000, and do it properly and implement it properly, which I will always be grateful for. I've been a constructive critic of SAFA, but I'll always be grateful for Molefi Olifant signing off on that deal, which allowed Sasol and Worldwide Sports and SAFA to really drive a vision. And people who are old enough to remember will remember that it was actually a 6-year journey, which started off at under 20s. It used to be sponsored by United Bank, the very first under 20s, United Bank, which then became ABSA. We came second in the African Youth Champs in Morocco, which then qualified us automatically for the World Youth Champs in 1997. We were the first national team to qualify for an intercontinental tournament, and that was the core of our team. You'll remember Wayne Roberts, Junaid Hartley, Patrick Mbutu, Benny McCarthy. The core of our team came from that under 20 generation. And 18 of those players then moved on to, and this is crucial, 18 of those players moved on to the under 23s, which then started to look towards 2000 in Sydney, coached by the same coaches, Brashakes and Brakeni and Bratabo Dladla. So there was consistency up until that stage. We played in a number of tournaments, the famous Toulon tournament in the south of France. We traveled around the world, but especially in Africa, which then put us at a great advantage when it came to our qualifying games. And the games that we played against, we were actually quite lucky in our first preliminary qualifier against Togo. We drew 2-2 away, a deflected goal and a own goal. And then we won 1-0 at home, a Quinton Fortune, a magic run from him, which created a penalty, and he slotted the penalty. And we were then into the group stages. So, that whole journey leading up to the New Zealand playoffs was an incredible one. But I can never really understand why that hasn't been replicated by SAFA again.
I still remember that New Zealand playoff when we were playing here at home. That Daniel Matsau header. Daniel Matsau was a very short player, but when he jumped and headed that ball, and I mean, it went crazy. Then you guys went to the Olympics. No one gave you a chance against the mighty Brazil that had the young Ronaldinho, they had Edu, the striker, but you guys came up top.
Yeah, well, first of all, we were a little bit naive. It's very important to give young national teams experience. So we had that Nations Cup, the World Youth Champs, a number of tournaments under our belt, and I was a little bit disappointed at how naive we were against Japan in the first game. But that the disappointment kind of set us up for that victory against Brazil. I'll never forget sitting in the change room and watching the Brazilian team dance past us at the beginning of the game, before the game, beating their drums, and you could see they were a little bit arrogant, and that really put extra fire inside us. And there was a moment in that game when it was 1-1 on 72 minutes, where Benny McCarthy and Delron Buckley and I think Quinton Fortune actually committed a series of fouls against the Brazilians. And it wasn't a very nice piece of play, but it set the tone for what happened in 2 minutes' time, when there was a lovely cross in from David Kaname, and Siyabonga Nomvete outjumped the Brazilian defense and put us 2-1 ahead. And from then on, it was always going to be the South Africans. And then again, a bit of naivety against Slovakia. I think I would have obviously preferred to have beaten Japan and Slovakia and lost to Brazil and perhaps gone through. But typical South Africans, we kind of rise to the occasion against the bigger teams, and that's something that we have to get rid of, that habit.
How did you overcome the disappointment of 2002 World Cup? Because you missed out through injury. I know that you were one of the players that everybody was looking forward to see playing in that World Cup, but you picked up a serious knee injury before the tournament.
Yeah, it actually wasn't a serious one. It was one of those little meniscus injuries that a lot of footballers suffer from. And if you catch it soon, you can be out for maybe a month. So it was just bad timing. It was my first small operation that I'd ever had to have. Mark Fish got injured. Brajay then called myself up, and we traveled to Hong Kong for a pre-tournament tournament, and that's where I picked up this injury, and unfortunately I had to be sent home. The late Jacob Legeto then replaced myself, and I kind of used that disappointment. I've actually got the little piece of cartilage that got taken out of my knee is actually just behind me there in a little jar. I keep it in a little.
Oh, okay, I see there.
Just as a reminder, that you should always humble yourself to the football gods. If you think that you're too arrogant or too ahead of yourself, they will always bring you down to earth.
Oh no. Then Matthew, because I want to talk about your international career first before we get to club football. Then fast forward 2009. I don't want us to talk about the World Cup now, but I want us to talk about the Confed Cup, because you were one of our best players in the 2009 Confed Cup. Again, you partnered Aaron Mokoena, the same guy you partnered in the 2000 Olympics. You were jersey number 14 at the back, Matthew Booth, winning aerial balls, contributing, and the crowd still screaming, "Booth!" How was it like for you?
Yeah, it was brilliant, because for the past 6 years while I was in Russia, I didn't get a call-up. And I was playing some of my best football. And the only reason that I got a call up in 2008 was when we failed to qualify for the Nations Cup for the very first time. And a lot of the journalists were asking, "Where's Booth? Where's Booth?" You know, they didn't know how I was playing in Russia, but it was almost a sign of desperation, you know. And so I got called up, and I played a couple of friendlies, and I won 2 Man of the Match awards in a row, and that kind of set me up for retaining my place in Bafana Bafana. And it's always a lesson for young players where a coach doesn't like you, never put your head down. Always make sure that you are prepared for your chance. Because if you're not prepared for your chance, it's unlikely that you're going to get another one, you know. And I took my chance, and I played all 5 of those Confederations Cup games against Brazil and Spain, who were number 1 and number 2 in the world at the time. And that for me will be memorable because that was the first time that I'd actually been able to gauge myself against the best in the world. So that was great to have. I never played in an established league. I never played in England. I never played in Spain, you know. So the opportunity to play against those players was fantastic.
Well, then came the World Cup. A lot of people didn't know that outside of South Africa, you were the face of the tournament.
They could have picked a better face. I mean, really.
I mean, you were the person they were using to market the tournament and to speak about the unity of the South Africans, the Rainbow Nation, and I remember reading an article long time ago that some media outlets, they were saying you were being booed by the South Africans, but they didn't understand the relationship that we as fans had with you.
Yeah. You know, obviously the local fans who follow South African football and the local journalists knew the story. But for the very first time, there was a horde of international journalists who descended on South Africa. Obviously, we were getting ready for the World Cup. And for the first time, you know, they had encountered a white guy, being the only white guy in the team, and the majority black fans booing me. And so you can understand their reaction, but it was a knee-jerk reaction. They should have really done their homework and really just asked before they printed some of their stories, you know. And I remember an Italian and Spanish journalists in particular, because at the time their very own leagues had taken some criticism for the racism occurring in their leagues. They jumped the gun and assumed immediately that the fans were booing me because of the color of my skin, which was ridiculous. And I'll always be proud of South African football for the fact that generally our football represents our demographic, you know. You only have to look at the 96 squad, the present day squad as well. If you look at the PSL, you know, it's quite well represented across color lines. So we've never really had an issue when it comes to color, and I felt a little bit uncomfortable being picked out and singled out. But yeah, it is what it is.
We have called Alexandra here. He says, "What a legend! Massive respects for you." But before we talk about your journey in the PSL and in Russia, someone wants to know here, which PSL team do you support now?
Yeah, first of all, with regards to Cole Alexander, fantastic season once again, Cole. All the best for next season. He always used to, at Ajax Cape Town, he always used to tease me about my dress sense. So if he looks at the corner there, I've got a number of awards for the most stylish person. So he must just look carefully in the corner and take some tips.
I have a very crazy story about Cole Alexandra myself. But it's not funny. But I always laugh when I remember the story. That Ajax once loaned him to Chippa United, and Chippa United wanted to loan him to a team in the ABC League. But no, he is a fantastic player. We love him a lot, and he actually helped Sundowns to win the league We'll always appreciate his contribution. Matthew.
Yeah. He's
Matthew.
done his next step should be Bafana Bafana. I think him and Nange and Monare have been fantastic for Wits, and a very sad way to end the season. So a great pity that Bidvest will be no longer.
But first he must find a club, eh?
Yeah, well, it's there's one in Limpopo that wants him.
Not the new one, please. not the new one. Call Alexander. You must speak to us, but you must not go to Limpopo. I've got a good team for you. Matthew, then you moved to Sundowns. Obviously, as a Sundowns fan, I was very excited to have you at Sundowns, and I always enjoyed watching you play. How was it like for you? Your first stint at Sundowns. How was it like?
Yeah, well, if you remember, Sundowns had won 2 leagues in a row. They were champions under Ted Dimitru. Paul Rubberface Dolazar had taken over, and because I had managed to fight for my free agents right through the league after the amalgamation of Cape Town Spurs and Seven Stars, Sundown snapped me up as a free agent. So arriving there with the likes of, such a talented squad, it was quite unbelievable. Was really great for me. It was a bit difficult at first because I'd been coached by old school English coaches at Cape Town Spurs. And so the long ball down the channel was kind of a habit of mine. And I remember one of the first weeks during training, the guy shouting at me, every time I looked up to play that long ball, no, get it down, play it into the right back or play it into midfield, get it to Roger Futumba, or to Barnes. And that was a habit that I had to get out of, which I did so. But I kept that long ball in my pocket just as a surprise. And I used it quite effectively. But that was something that I remember very clearly, having to change my game quite significantly.
And obviously at Sundowns you won the league, and I remember the Rotmans Cup final. And as Sundowns fans, we had lost the Rotmans Cup twice to Kaizer Chiefs, and then came the final against Free State Stars. We won 2-0, and you had a very great game on that day. How was it like to win a cup of that magnitude? Because it was the biggest trophy at the time.
Yes, you can. I remember. Alan Amugu, I think, scoring one of them. He was a very close friend of mine. I spent a lot of time with Alan. So that was to win the double in my first season coming up from Cape Town. It was fantastic, and I caught the bug for winning trophies there. And just to answer Fafala Ten's question, quickly, I forgot. I'm from Cape Town, so I'm a little bit biased. So, I've played for so many clubs that have paid me a salary and paid my wages. It's difficult to say or say one club in particular, because I'll always be fond of Sundowns, Wits, Cape Town Spurs, and Ajax Cape Town naturally. But being from Cape Town, I always want to see representation from that area. So yeah, any team from Cape Town, whether it be amateur or professional, I'm rooting for it.
No, it's understandable, and I also understand. I also understand why you will never forget Alan Amagu, because you know the story with the nanny. No, that's fine, man. Then you went to Russia. You went to Russia, and you had a long career in Russia. How was it like for you to stay in Russia?
Yeah, so I'd also had a bit of a legal battle with Natasha Chiklis, and eventually it got sorted out. But I think she realized that she better get rid of me and make a little bit of money out of me as soon as possible. And when Viktor Bondarenko was coaching us. He's originally from Rostov in the south of Russia. And Rostov at that stage in the Russian Premier League was in relegation trouble. They were bottom of the log. And he arranged for myself and Gift Kampamba to travel to Russia. And I was at the stage of my career where I hadn't been able to make a move to England or to Spain or, France. So I realized that I needed to start making money and to try and maximize my earnings as soon as possible. And it turned out to be a very good move. Myself and Gift had an enormous impact on Rostov. We had 10 games left. We were bottom of the table when myself and Gift arrived. And within 4 or 5 games, we were already clear of relegation. And we didn't lose the last 10 games. So the fans were always, they loved us. And the following year, we made it to the Russian Cup final, which for a team like Rostov at that stage was almost unheard of. So we had a very good 2 years at Rostov. And because of the likes of Jacob Lecheto at Lokomotiv, myself and Gift, there was a sudden interest in South African and African players. And at one stage at Rostov, we had Rowan Hendricks, Tony Coyle, Japheth Zwane, Esau Kanyenda, all come to the club. So we had our own community of Southern Africans in the south of Russia.
It was a very exciting time to see a lot of players from the PSL moving to Russia at that time. Someone just asked a question here about your Paisley with Siyabonga Nomvete.
I always get this, bro. I always get this. When you posted on Instagram, there were 2 comments, and the second comment was, please talk about. It was in Zulu, but I knew exactly what the guy was talking about. He was asking me about Ubele, and actually, Sia was not a difficult striker to play against because I had trained with him so many times at the under-23 level. But there was one particular game where myself and Muisia Jao just had an absolute nightmare in the game.
I remember that game.
And fans will always remind me about that. So yeah, it's part of football. I can, when I look back at my career, almost 20 years, I can pick out very clearly in my memory. And I know I've had more bad games, but I can pick out maybe 4 or 5 games which I look back at and I really regret. Especially when SuperSport start to show those older games from back in the day, and they choose the one game where I was absolute murder.
You might as well answer Cole Alexander's question. Who was the toughest opponent?
Well, I think locally, when I was at Cape Town Spurs, I came up against Rafael Chuku. Now Rafael was a player, and normally as a defender, you come up against a short, low center of gravity striker who you have to give a bit of space, so that you don't let him get in behind you. Or you play against a more Pollard Ndlanya or the late Leslie Manyatela type player who I really loved playing against because they were tall, statuesque, they would hold up the ball and I could really get stuck into them. Rafael Chuku was a mixture of those, and it didn't help that the size of his thighs were probably bigger than my waist, at that age. And if you went into a 50-50 tackle with him, there was only one result. So you always had to have 2 central defenders or 2 defenders on him to give you extra cover. And he was pacey. He had incredible pace. So an incredible shot as well. He wasn't afraid to take chances from outside the box because there's 2 types of strikers. there's a box striker who loves the tap-ins, like, Butcher Gueno from Real Madrid, the vulture, and they can smell a chance in the box. Or there's a striker who's not afraid to strike it from outside the box. He's a good striker from anywhere. And he was, again, both of those. He smelt the opportunity. He could guess when the defender was going to make a mistake. He could read the game very well. So he was my toughest local striker to play against, for sure.
Rafael Chuku. Then you came back, Matthew, in Russia. You came back and then you played for Sundowns again. Why it wasn't easy for you to leave Sundowns? Because each time, like you told us now, when you left for the first time, there was a legal dispute. I know that when you left the second time, there was also an issue with Sundowns. Because Sundowns, what they did to you was unfair and unjust. They left you injured and without assisting you rehabilitate your injury. Your second stint at Sundowns, how was it like?
Yeah, so I'd spent 6 years in Russia, and I wasn't getting called up to the national team. So I had my eye on 2010. So that was one big reason why I came back to South Africa. The second one was that my eldest son was 4 years old, and there was no international school or school that spoke English in the town that we were staying at. So that was another big reason why we came back. And when I came back to South Africa, I wanted to win things. I was coming towards the end of my career. I wanted to win more trophies, and I'd been at Sundowns before and won trophies there. So that was not only about the money and the fact that Patrice was now the owner. Obviously, that was also an element that I had to consider. But I wanted to win things. That's the biggest thing for any professional player. It shouldn't be about the money. It should be about your CV. So I'd made a bit of money in Russia, and I signed a 3-year contract with an additional +1, what we call a +1, which is an option for Sundowns to sign. And unfortunately, during those 3 years, we didn't win anything. And the reason was that in many of the transfer windows, Sundowns would buy far too many players. I remember even in one January window, they brought in 14 players.
We, as Sundowns fans, we call that era the dark era.
It was. And I was very sorry to have been part of that. And the funny thing was that each season, or every 6 months, we had the best squad in the country, from a talent point of view. But none of those coaches were able to form a formidable team because the squad kept changing every 6 months. And I remember when I got injured, sitting with my crutches in one team meeting with the technical committee and the owner and all of the players in their meeting room. And when I had a chance to speak, I brought this up. I said to Patrice, look, this cannot continue, And I could see I was not very popular with my statement. But I had to say it. As one of the senior players, I had to say it. My contract then, I had been playing regularly before my injury. I got injured against Wits. I did my ACL, which is normally 7 to 8 months out. And at my age, it was a very bad injury. It was my first serious injury. And it happened in March. My contract came to an end in June. In June, they then told me that they were not going to use the additional 1 year option. And that was disappointing, but I understood it because of my age and the fact that I had a bad injury. I understood that. That's football, I was a little bit disappointed that I'd been a first team regular and they'd taken this decision. But I was really angry, Pro, at the fact that they didn't even offer for me to continue using their medical staff and their facilities so that I could recover. And so that was the biggest disappointment. So now I'm in a position where I'm 32, 33. I've got 2 or 3 months left of my rehab, and now I had to find a club, you know. So they put me in a very weak position. But, you know, looking back at my 6 years at Sundowns, look, I mean, I'm still very fond of the players that I've played against and that are still there, that I've played with and against. I'm only very happy for the playing squad. But obviously, I've still got a bit of an issue with the management and the way they treated me. But it's fantastic to see that team progress under Pitso. And one of the big reasons why he's been so successful is the fact that when he rescued the club from Neeskens, he was in a position to sit down with Patrice and say, okay, Patrice, I want the power of the transfer, who comes in and out of the team. And that I can imagine. I don't know what happened, but that I can imagine is what happened. And so the coach has now got the power to bring in players and release players that he wants, not somebody else. And that is the way it should be. And since that time, they've got a very big squad, but I think when you look over the last 4 or 5 seasons, the actual playing squad has remained very consistent. And I feel that's one of the big reasons why they've been so successful.
What is your opinion about the messed up that they did in the final?
Look, I still don't know what went on. You know, we were all, I know that the presenters, you know, at SuperSport were all debating about what could have happened. I'm not sure how that mistake could have happened on any game, but such an important game. There was obviously some lack of oversight or miscommunication somewhere along the line. But yeah, we'll just wait and see, you know, what happens. You know, I don't want to get into it because I really don't know the details. But it's disappointing that an error of that nature has slightly tainted a fantastic treble from a fantastic team. But yeah, they've won the treble. They've come back from that 13-point gap against Chiefs. So if I was a Down supporter, I would be ecstatic. And yeah, the amount of what's been really remarkable is that if you take into account the number of games that Sundowns have played over the last 4 or 5 seasons, the man management from Pitso and his team, and the medical staff in particular, the medical staff don't get enough credit from the South African public for what they've been able to achieve at Sundowns. That for me alone has been a small miracle. You
know? From Sundowns, you went to Ajax Cape Town. You went back home to Ajax Cape Town. You revived your career, and I remember you were at one stage Ajax Cape Town's Player of the Year. Was it more about you proving a point, or was it more about you showing your class and experience?
Yeah. So I've always used that anger for good. You know, I've always directed it, tried to funnel it into the right direction. So I used that disappointment at Sundowns to get back to full fitness. I remember, you know, using money out of my own pocket to use 2 Biokinetas, one in Pretoria and one on the West Rand, to see which one was the most aggressive in their rehabilitation of my knee. I stuck to my rehabilitation to the T, and I was back on the training field thanks to the medical staff as well at Ajax Cape Town within 6 months. And for that season, I continued to use that anger to try and prove to my doubters that I still had another 3 or 4 seasons in me. And, you know, when you've been out for a long time from the game that you love and you get a chance to return, that often is always going to be a good season for you because you've missed the game that you love. And I think that's what happened to me in my first season at Ajax. And I think we had a very young team. And I took it upon myself as well to try and tutor and lend a hand to the likes of Tulani Hlatshwayo. Musa Labusa was there at left back. So we had a great young team that just needed one or two older shoulders or people to lean on at the right time.
And from Ajax, then the last club that you went to was Bidvest Wits. And obviously, after Bidvest Wits, you call it quit. At Wits, obviously, you found a very close unit. How was it like for you there?
Yeah, it was fantastic. You know, Ajax wanted to keep me, but due to personal reasons, I decided to move back to Johannesburg. Wits offered me a 1+1. At the age of 35, I moved back to Johannesburg. I've always wanted to be coached by Gavin Hunt, somebody who's won many trophies. He's a great character, and I got on very well with him. And it was a fantastic team, brimming full of talent. The late Papi Fati was I was probably most closest to. And in fact, just the other day, my young boy Noah was actually quite close with Papi, and often used to send him voice notes, especially when he was injured, and they had a nice relationship. They would always kick around together at training. And Noah the other day came up to me and asked me where Uncle Papi was, and I didn't have the heart to tell him, you know. And it's very sad that we've lost a number of quality players along the way. Not only who have passed away, but have fallen by the wayside due to some form of addiction. And yeah, very sorry not to have won something in my last season. My last game was against Pirates in the Nedbank final, 2017. And Wits wanted to take up that one-year option. But due to little niggling injuries in my ankle and my knees, I found that the daily training was becoming quite, not tiresome, but it was taking a toll on my body. And purely because of that, I decided to not take up their offer. And it was a difficult decision, but I'd played the majority of the games at Wits, and I didn't want to struggle with injury the following season and go out on a low note. I felt that the time was just right.
In all your years in the PSL and in Bafana Bafana, let me start at PSL. Who was the best centre-back partner for you?
It's a good question. Good question. Look, when I moved from when I moved from amateur to pro, I arrived at Cape Town Spurs with the likes of Ronnie Zondi and Michael Jacobs, who had completely different styles of playing. Ronnie was very elegant and upright and used to pass the ball out from the back, where Michael Jacobs would kick the hell out of any striker, you know, and be very aggressive and very, very good in the air. He used to score a lot of set pieces.
And there was also Craig Rosley at right back.
Yes, that's right. David Inyati at left back. Yeah. So those were the players initially that I looked up to, but I didn't get to play with them very much. And so when I moved to Sundowns and started to play regularly at Downs, the late Jose Magalejo, Mike Manzini, who's an absolute legend at the club, those were the two players who I loved playing with in a back three. Under Paul Dolezal, we played this 3-5-2 system. And so I'd probably say Jos and Mike Manzini.
And at Bafana Bafana, who was your best partner?
At Bafana, look, I would have loved to have played more for Bafana. but I think our under 23 pairing, myself and Fabian McCarthy. You mentioned that it was Aaron and myself, but in actual fact, what Shakes used to do was he played David Kannemeyer, myself, Fabian, and Aaron McQueen at right back, and he put Nkipiteni Matombo as a right winger for a more defensive block on the right hand side. And that kind of meant that Stanton Fredericks lost out at right wing, and he used Stanton as an impact player off the bench, which worked for us on many occasions where we were chasing a goal. He would put on Stanton and he would do something for us. Then at a later stage, obviously, Mbazo got moved to centre back. But I would probably say that centre back pairing of myself and Fabian, I really enjoyed it.
Because I'm pressed because of time. Briefly, Matthew, you wrote an open letter to Minister Nathi Mthethwa. Has he responded yet?
No, he hasn't. But let me just say that I first, I've learned in my career not to skip any steps. You can't jump over the hierarchy. You have to follow the steps. So I sent a letter to SAFA. Initially, I didn't get any response, and please bear in mind that somebody at SAFA actually encouraged me to write the letter. Right? So there are many good people in many of our organizations that govern our sport. I didn't receive any response from SAFA. That was early this year. I then got encouragement from somebody inside the sports ministry to write a letter to Minister Mthethwa, which I did, which was in May. And I'm still hoping that maybe one of the organizations will write back. If people are interested, it's on my social media. It was an open letter, and it wasn't my idea. It was an idea which I've collected over my numerous years as playing as a pro from many different sources. And the main element was this Dutch pension scheme, which I feel would work with our local players, a forced pension scheme so that players, when they retire, they don't start eating into their savings straight away. It's so sad, Pro. 75% of our players are either broke 5 years after retirement. 5 years after retirement are either broke, divorced, or drug or alcohol dependent, or a mixture of those. And that's not only here; it's also in Europe. When you look at the NFL and NBA, they have similar statistics. So it's not only a South African problem, but I think we really have to address it. So if we can get more personalities adding their voice and more pressure on authorities to do something, then hopefully we will get something done.
Both education, sports and trust. It's your initiative together with your wife. And I've seen also Nathan Paulse has almost the very same passion as you about assisting current and ex-professionals. Would you say this is the right time? Because COVID-19 revealed a lot of things to us as South Africans. Would you say this is the right time for you and Nathan Paulse to get more public platforms and to start assisting our professional players?
Yeah, look, so in the interim, during lockdown, myself, Brian Baloy, and Stanton Fredericks started up the South African Football Legends. Initially, next year, we're hoping to celebrate the 20 years of the class of 2000 as a celebration, but we want to use it as a base and a foundation to provide a platform for ex-players where they can get education, investment opportunities, psychological help, and roll out coaching clinics and support to our communities. There's so many different things that we can do with the organization. So we're busy approaching corporate to try and get on board, and hopefully that will be launched next year. We will eventually also encourage females to also join. Our women's game is also vitally important, and we should be giving young girls the same opportunities as young boys. So yeah, to answer your question, lockdown has had its positives. We've been able to think and plan and suggest things that can better our game, and hopefully it will be taken in a constructive manner. You know, it's not a criticism. We want the game to get better, and there are many ex-players who are doing a fantastic job in their communities with their own NPOs, especially now during lockdown, where you quite rightly said, bro. You know, lockdown has exposed the inequalities in our society, and I just hope that our footballers and footballing community continue to support their communities.
In closing, your best PSL 11.
Wow. That I've played against or just ever.
You can't be part of the team. You can't be the coach. So you give me the best PSL 11 that you've played with or played against. It's up to you. And you must also give me the coach of that 11. You are Patrice Motsepe of this team.
Okay, that sounds very good. Do I have his bank account as well?
Obviously, I'm giving you everything that you want.
Okay. So I'm going to be a bit spicy here with the coaches, right? So I'm going to put Pitso Mosamani and Gavin Hunt together as co-coaches. Do you think that's going to work?
Yes, it's going to work. Okay, I'm noting down, okay? Right, your goalkeeper. Okay, what formation are you playing?
I think I'll go for the... I've always enjoyed the 4-4-2, so let me stick to a traditional 4-4-2. Yeah.
Okay, because a lot of people are not aware that you are starting to become a coach. So the opportunity to kill it. Your keeper.
You're putting me on the spot. I haven't thought about it. My keeper, I'd probably say Wayne Roberts.
Roberts, yeah. Former Cape Town Spurs keeper.
Yes, that's right. Many people will probably be critical of that choice, but I think the players who played with him will agree that he was one of the greatest talents and probably the only South African goalkeeper to have interest shown by the great Sir Alex Ferguson.
I agree. He was a good talent. You're right back.
Right back, I would have to say Themba Mnguni.
Themba Mnguni, okay. Left.
Definitely David Inyati. He had the ability to play traditional left back or play as a wing back, and he had a fantastic engine on him. I think David Kaname would probably come close to him, but I think the fact that David was part of that 96 squad, he just takes it.
Okay. You will have Kaname as well, or you're going to give me another centre back pairing?
No, David would be second to David Inyati. David Kaname would be second to David Inyati. The centre back, the two centre backs. I would have to say Thulani Hlatshwayo as a right-sided centre back.
Okay.
And Alia Shoot. I'm sure Sundowns will remember. Very, very. He was majestical on the ball, and I've always felt that a right and a left-footed centre-back pairing has always brought balance to the team. So he was also very good at the near post and scored a lot of goals from set pieces. So Alia Shoot him.
Okay. Your midfield four.
Yeah. So my midfield four, probably the attacking midfielder in the middle would have to be Surprise Mariri.
Okay.
And apologies for so many Sundowns players, but I did spend 6 years at Sundowns, so please forgive me, Chiefs and Pirates fans. So Surprise had probably one of the best first touches. Kama Billiat reminds me of Surprise. His first touch was simply awesome. Very clever player. And he had a fantastic weighted pass as well. So I would definitely have in that position. As a defensive midfielder, I didn't play often against him, but the work rate of John Moeti always impressed me. when he was at Pirates. Short in stature, but the work rate and his distribution and the way he was able to break down play was fantastic. But I mean, we've actually had so many good defensive midfielders. You have to look at Esrom Nyandoro, Hlompo, Dean Furman. The list is endless. So that was a very close one, but I would probably say John. Yeah.
Okay. Your wingers?
My wingers from under 23s, they were a fantastic pairing, and it was like hand to glove. And I think Jabu Pule, now Mahlangu, and Stanton Stigger Fredericks, the two of them were caused a hell of a lot of trouble. And they could come off the bench and change the game for you as well. Especially Jabu, depending on what mood he was in.
Whether he slept the night before or not.
Yeah, I mean, we have a good laugh about it now. But hell, some of the players, when you think of old John Mabizela, Jabu, Junaid Hartley, what potential they held, unfortunately, I don't think was fulfilled fully. But I was happy to have just had a brief experience in what they could do.
Don't forget Wayne Roberts and Emile Baron as well. Your front two.
So my front two, this will be a very close one. I always liked the elegance and the finishing ability of the late Leslie Maliatela. He would be very close. Rafael Chuku would be very close up there with him. But the second striker would have to be Mambush. What he was able to do inside and outside the box, his reading of the game. He was a typical goal poacher, brave. He was for me an all-round striker, which paired very nicely with a taller striker like a Rafael or Alan Amugu. So I think those two would have done some serious damage.
I don't think this team would have won a treble, but it looks like a very strong team, Matthew.
But you put me on the spot as well, so forgive me if I've left out anybody. I mean, I've played with so many players. I didn't mention anybody from our Russian years. Nobody would have really recognized them. But that's the purpose.
That's the purpose. We put you on the spot so that you won't cook a list and start giving us names from Rostov, even from Wimbledon or from AMK Dons. We just wanted you to give us on the spot. Matthew, you've given us a fantastic time. Hope this is not the last one. You are going to give us another one in the near future, because we want to talk more about the best program, both education, sports, trust. Thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure, bro. Always a pleasure, and well done this season. Yeah? Give somebody else a chance next season, please.
No, we'll give other teams a chance after 2024.
Nice one. Thanks a lot, man. Always a pleasure.
Say hi to Mama Sonia and the boys for us. Football fans wanted to tell you that they appreciate you, they love you, and they will always remember the contribution that you had in South African football. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys too, and thanks all for your support over the years. Without you guys, we as players in the game are truly nothing. So keep it up, keep supporting your teams, and we'll see you next season.
All right. Good night, Matthew. Boo!